Hello there, good evening. Washington's June deadline hangs over a war growing darker by the hour. As Russia pounds Ukraine's power grid, plunging cities into cold and darkness, Kyiv refuses Moscow's demand to surrender the Donbass. Behind closed doors, a staggering $12 trillion Dmitriev package emerges between Washington and Moscow, while the Zaporizhia nuclear plant teeters on the brink without stable power. With past talks yielding nothing, can a calendar date end 4 years of bloodshed, or simply force a surrender disguised as peace? Also, meanwhile, Britain's new law now criminalises non-consensual AI-generated images, a landmark step against digital deception. Yet, with over 73,000 petitioners demanding removal orders and victims suffering profound psychological harm, a question remains. Can prison sentences alone heal wounds when harmful content still circulates online? Criminalisation may be necessary, but without swift takedowns and victim support, is it truly sufficient protection? These are topics tonight that we'll be putting in focus. Welcome to the program. The Guardian has reported that the Trump administration has pivoted to a high-pressure strategy, setting a strict June deadline to end the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Following inconclusive talks in Abu Dhabi, Washington is now demanding a definitive, clear schedule to halt hostilities. This shift reflects a move from open-ended diplomacy to a results-oriented mandate. President Zelensky confirmed that trilateral negotiations will move to Miami next week, while the Ukrainian side describes recent dialogues as constructive. Zelensky notes that American domestic interests, so specifically the upcoming midterm elections, are likely driving this accelerated diplomatic timeline. This June target is critical for global grain security and energy stability. However, the success of the Miami summit hinges on whether Moscow views this deadline as a genuine peace opportunity or merely an American political maneuver. And according to the Moscow Times, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has slammed the Trump administration, accusing Washington of sabotaging peace. Despite Trump's day one promises, Lavrov claims the U.S. continues Biden's hostile policies, citing recent seizures of Russian oil tankers and aggressive new sanctions against energy giants Lukoil and Rosneft. This friction is alarming. Lavrov argues that the U.S. is weaponizing global energy routes rather than seeking a fair deal. While Washington pushes for a June deadline, Moscow sees only artificial obstacles and a lack of genuine economic cooperation, leaving bilateral relations in a deep freeze. The Abu Dhabi talks have stalled over territorial disputes, making the upcoming Miami summit a high-stake gamble. The failure of these understandings means continued pressure on global markets. Without a real diplomatic breakthrough, the rosy future Trump promised remains a distant illusion. And to talk this through with us, joining us from Washington, D.C. is the American journalist Matthew Vadum. Thank you very much for being here with us on the program. So this June deadline, what do you make of the June deadline? And is it, like Zelensky says, a play for popularity when it comes to the midterms in November?
It's hard to say, but that is as good a guess as any that I've heard. President Trump views himself as a master negotiator, a world-class deal maker, and he wants to get a peace deal, hammered out as soon as possible. And if it were to be completed by June, then that would give him a few months before the midterm congressional elections in November. in which the president, right now, Republicans control both houses of Congress, but traditionally, after a president's been elected, the the party out of power regains control of Congress. And right now it looks like the Democrats are going to regain control of the House, and it's a little bit murkier whether they're going to control the Senate. So certainly President Trump wants to get this out of the way, not necessarily because he's sick of being harangued by Democrats, but because he's also encountering some resistance among his own political base in the Republican Party. A lot of Republican voters do not support the U.S. giving aid to Ukraine. They view it as a corrupt place, and they think that it's not much different from Russia in that respect. And so, President Trump wants to try to wrap this up as soon as possible, and midterm elections coming up is as good an excuse for any to inject a sense of urgency into the matter. All good salesmen close deals by injecting a sense of urgency into a negotiation, and this might do it.
Yes, and of course, he did say he was going to solve this problem on day one of his presidency, so
Yes,
it
he
needs to
did.
be off the table, I guess. But when it comes to the negotiations themselves, of course, Russia is intensifying strikes on power grids, plunging cities into darkness. Of course, hitting civilian infrastructure is illegal in war terms, but they're doing it anyway. Does that make it more difficult for Ukraine to sit at the table as they intensify these strikes? I know that Trump asked Russia to stop doing it for a week or so, and I don't think it lasted that long a few weeks ago. Does that make it more difficult, do you think?
I think it definitely tries the patience of Ukrainian negotiators and of President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine. Yeah, because they feel that quite properly that they are under siege by Russia right now. The war is basically a stalemate. However, Russia has been making slow but steady gains in recent times, and both sides. There's no clear way out of this conflict, which is probably why the idea of negotiating a settlement appeals to them both. Although both sides will never admit it. Both sides say they want to fight, till the last man. That Ukraine says they're never going to give up the territory, such as in the Donbass region and so on, that was conquered by Russia. And Russia says it needs the territory in Ukraine that it conquered, which is like 19 or 20% of the surface area of Ukraine, and isn't willing to give it back. So, this is a major. Who has sovereignty over the land that has been captured, that is by conquest by Russia, is still a major sticking point. And for President Trump is fine. Apparently, his negotiating team is finding it difficult to get around this stubborn fact that both sides are dug in on the issue of territory.
Yeah, when it comes to the Donbass, I think Russia has taken part of it, but they want in any deal to take all of it, and that's their red line. Where if Zelensky was to to sign a deal where Russia got that territory, he'd be finished, wouldn't he?
I imagine he would be finished with his own people. They would not be happy about that because he's been a gung-ho leader since Russia invaded. What was it back in the latest invasion in 2022? He's been pretty steadfast and one could argue even Churchillian in his resolve to to not give an inch to the Russian invaders. And yeah, I think it would make him. I think it would make him unpopular at home and would likely jeopardize his standing as president of Ukraine.
And Zelensky mentioned this, what he called the Dmitriev package, which is $12 trillion in economic deals between the United States and Russia, I guess coming out of any kind of a peace deal. What's your view on that?
Was it $12 trillion? I hadn't
12,
heard that.
$12 trillion, it's apparently.
Oh well, that's a fantastic amount, and I find it hard to believe that it would be $12 trillion.
Yes.
But I'm sure it's a large amount for the parties concerned, considering how relatively small compared to the United States are the economies of Ukraine and Russia. So I'm sure there'd be a lot of big potential deals that would flow from a peace agreement. And President Trump wants these things to happen. He also wants to make sure that the United States get its cut, that it gets its part of whatever riches are created through a peace deal.
Yes, I think there was a deal, wasn't there, for the rare earth minerals a little while ago as well.
Right.
How worried, Matthew, would you say that we should be about the nuclear side of this? The nuclear power plants in Zaporizhia, for instance. I mean, we all remember, or those of us old enough too, remember Chernobyl and the fallout from that. With the war going on, with nuclear power plants getting in the way, how worried do you think we should be about that?
I guess a little worried. I wouldn't worry about it excessively. They haven't, if you're afraid that they're going to hit a nuclear power plant and it's going to cause a Chernobyl-like meltdown and the spread of deadly radiation throughout Europe, I think the chance of that is pretty unlikely. But yes, it is definitely a risk, and it's something that needs to be, factored into um, the equation here. I still am amazed from years ago, just as an aside, that Ukraine, back when President Bill Clinton was in power, gave up its nuclear shield and agreed, to surrender its nuclear arsenal, and that still got me scratching my head. And it was a bad move, but that's what they did, and so they're stuck with it.
Yeah, I was asking a guest from Kiev, a political guest from Kiev, about that very thing. Do they regret giving up their
I'll bet
nuclear
they do.
deterrent? And he said it is something that is talked about often in Kiev. Um, uh, so we had the talks in Abu Dhabi. They were supposedly productive, and then we're moving on to the talks in Miami. What are your thoughts, predictions about what, if anything, might come out of these talks?
I am a realist, somewhere between a realist and a pessimist when it comes to wars like the Russia-Ukraine war. And I don't expect anything productive will come out of these talks. But I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see into the future, predict what's going to happen. And I've been wrong about these things many times before. Someone could pull a rabbit out of a hat and arrive at some kind of a deal. I think there's one of the proposals is that, there be sort of a semi-autonomous free enterprise zone in part of eastern Ukraine that territory, neither country would have sovereignty over, and that's something that can be looked at. Although I think that ultimately that proposal is not going to be is not satisfying to either of the warring parties.
And what do you make of Lavrov saying that the U.S. Under Trump is just as hostile as it was under Biden? He can't mean that seriously, can he?
I think that's just Russian propaganda. There's no
Yeah.
question. There's no question that that President Trump is a lot more friendly and sympathetic to Russia. Like President Trump, it's a little bit complex, and let me just explain. President Trump support and the United States support Ukraine. However, President Trump wants Ukraine to give up its territory in exchange for peace. And so he supports Ukraine, but he's not a 100% gung ho backer of Ukraine. He expects Ukraine to give a little, and so far they have not been doing so. So um, I'm not sure if they're going to be able to reach any kind of a breakthrough anytime soon. I think that President Trump is definitely much more friendly to Russia than Biden was, though President Trump is not nearly as friendly as Obama
Yeah.
was. Barack Obama, as president, was a complete Russophile and was very friendly to Russia. You remember he had that off the microphone moment years ago with then Russian President or Premier Dmitry Medvedev. I get the names a little mixed up in my head.
Yeah, Medvedev. Yeah, he was the president, wasn't he, for a
He
while?
was president when Putin and Medvedev were playing musical chairs with the
Yes.
president, but really Putin was the power behind the throne. It was a facade. But anyway, yeah. And President Obama had that off the mic moment when he said, "Well, I've got these midterm elections coming up. Why don't we just wait? Why don't we wait, and then I'll have more flexibility after those elections? You know,
Yeah.
wink, wink, nod, nod, like they do in Monty Python, right?
Yeah.
Wink,
Yeah.
wink."
I do
Uh,
remember that. I do remember that. Yes.
yes,
And of course,
and,
then we
and
had
so.
Crimea
That's
annexed
right.
under Obama.
Which Obama seemed to be saying wink, wink, nudge, nudge to.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah,
Okay, well, it's been great talking to you, Matthew Vadem, American journalist,
right.
joining us from DC. Much appreciated. It's good to have you on the program. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome anytime.
Now, as Britain criminalizes AI deep fakes to shield citizens from digital harm, a deeper crisis emerges. When reality itself can be forged, can laws restore trust or merely punish after the damage is already done? The UK government has highlighted that it is launching a major legal offensive against AI-generated deep fakes to protect citizens from digital harassment. New laws will criminalize the creation and sharing of deceptive, intimate images without consent. This shift treats digital abuse as a serious crime, with offenders facing up to 2 years in prison. For the first time, authorities will also prosecute those installing equipment to capture unauthorized images. This holistic approach aims to end online misogyny and secure the digital footprint of women and girls. It sends a clear message. Technology is no excuse for violating personal privacy. Tech platforms now face tougher scrutiny and heavy fines if they fail to remove this harmful content. And as we discussed in our segment, this policy marks a turning point in global digital safety. It ensures the law evolves as fast as the technology it regulates. And now, according to Breakpoint, AI-generated deepfakes, like the recent viral video of a deceased comedian, are triggering a reality collapse in global discourse. These digital forgeries succeed because they mimic familiar voices to bypass our skepticism. When we prioritize ideology over evidence, we risk embracing artificial truths just because they support our personal biases, so the article says. This phenomenon creates a post-trust society where genuine facts are dismissed alongside fabrications. As a researcher, I see this as a warning, says the article. When anything can be faked, everything becomes questionable. And it also says our reliance on these digital illusions reveals a fragile sense of identity that desperately seeks validation from artificial sources. To survive this era of manipulation, we must re-anchor our identities in objective truth and transcendent values. Now, to shed more light on this, joining us from London is Mr. Adil Darwish, who is a parliamentary correspondent. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Darwish. Before we get on to the deep fakes and the AI, I know it's been a tumultuous day in Westminster. Is there still a Prime Minister in number 10 Downing Street as we speak?
Yes, in about 20 minutes from now, he's going to address the backbenchers at Committee Room 14, if you're familiar with the Palace of Westminster, which is the largest committee room in the old palace. He's so far, in my opinion, securing his position, although it's very weak. He is more of a technocrat, a lawyer, dealing with the law at a stage where you need a politician of conviction. And he isn't. He's just quite weak. He lost his right-hand man, Morgan McSweeney, who resigned yesterday, sort of became a human shield, or carrying the cane for appointing Peter Mendelsohn. And this morning, the Tim Allen, who is director of communication, who is the fourth director of communication in a year, resigned as well. I recall all prime ministers or leaders who actually lost the chief of his staff, like Boris and like Theresa May. They didn't actually last long. Having said so, the cabinet so far given his support in tweets, apart from the leader of the Labour Scots, Thirwar, who actually called for resignation. No one has yet publicly called for it. And the reason for that is there is no mechanism actually effective enough to remove him. You need about 80 MPs to come out and sign no confidence and challenge him.
Well, it does look like he's going to live to fight another day. Let's go.
Well, he probably remain in office, but not in power.
Yes. A dead man walking, I think, is how one of the newspapers described it. Let's go back to why we're here then. With these deepfake volumes, they've surged from 500,000 to 8 million in 2 years. Do you think these criminal penalties can stop the harm and can stop the harmful content?
Well, I had a quick conversation with the SPAD of the Media, Culture and Sports Minister over this, and the main issue actually were two issues really. One, most acts, most laws, they actually punish the culprit after the event actually happens. So are we talking about sort of deterrence? But most laws are supposed to be deterrent, but the crime actually happens. Or are we talking about protection? The second issue also is it's so fast moving, the development and technology, that by the time the act gets refined and voted on and implemented and dealt with in the House of Lords and put into practice, it actually passed its sell-by date. So this is actually a real problem now, that technology is working faster than the politicians or the lawmakers who make the laws.
And of course, there was this Grok controversy, and the UK government was at odds with Elon Musk. Grok being the AI which is used on Elon Musk's platform X, in which you could have a picture of a woman and also children, and then you could put them in the AI. You just had to ask it, and within a millisecond, it would put them into compromising and situations you wouldn't want to see, basically. And this put them at odds. So why did this cause Britain to fast-track this particular law?
Well, because it actually was much easier than the way the European Union sort of issue law. That's number one. Number two, we already had an act. So that the new act, 2025 act, actually builds on what we already have. Thirdly, there was an outrage. There's a large number of women MPs now, and big trend inside. And then you have petitions signed by people and backbenchers. Because the way our parliament works is the constituency speak to the MP, and the MP speak to the constituency, and you have committees and so on. So it was much quicker, and that's needed. But as I said, the law itself, yes, it's fast, it's passed quickly. There was some pressure discussion with Elon Musk, and he had what made them halfway through, not really fully blocking his program making images. Only that you have to be actually a paying member to do that. So it's halfway through. But again, it's a deterrent if you actually catch the person and you manage to get prosecution and put him behind bars.
Yes, of course. I mean, there's one thing punishing the creators, but apparently at the moment there are at least 73,000 people who have petitioned for content to be taken down, which would fall foul of this particular law. And having it removed from platforms seems something almost beyond the platforms themselves.
Yes, that's actually quite a problem. Actually, that's something I discussed with this Pat today. There's no sort of way, even if you actually put it in the law, if you actually produce some kind of an act to say, yes, unless you're actually taking it down, we will stop your revenue coming from England or something like that. There's no way of enforcing it. If you actually they are outside the judiciary or the judicial reach of England and Wales, and you can't really implement it in a way. There has to be some kind of worldwide agreement. And if these companies are in America, platforms in America, all what you need to do really is some kind of economical pressures as the European Union sometimes practice, which we don't here. And that's it really. There's no way of enforcing the law.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's a global problem. But Britain has a new partnership with Microsoft, supposedly, to detect deepfakes fast enough to hopefully prevent the images going viral globally. That seems to me a little bit of a pipe dream. What do you think?
Yeah. Yes, again, you see, I'm not technical. I'm actually at the age of even something simple like sort of working the computer. I have to ask my children or someone young. It's a fast technology, and if you just look at the House of Commons and the House of Lords, how laws are made, it's very difficult to explain and understand. Yes, the partnership with Microsoft is a step forward, but again, will you be able to actually to stop it going viral? Well, I don't know. I mean, suddenly they will go a way to go around it, and they find a way, especially the young ones, go to around it, and even probably bypass it altogether. So I'm not quite sure how actually you're going to have this one. I think it's actually reaction to pressure. It's reaction of editorial newspaper and of people criticizing and people signing a petition, rather than an actual sort of a tool to submit to work. Well, who knows? Someone might come up with a tool that you can actually take it down.
Well, I must say that I'm not very technical either. And when you take a look at those on the benches of the House of Commons or the House of Lords, or even those in Congress, I think we've got a problem trying to sort this issue out between those people. So let me come back to something you will know more about just before we go. So the cabinet's rallied behind Keir Starmer today. It did look like he might have to resign this afternoon. They've rallied around him. We have elections, local elections in May in the United Kingdom. Do you think that is when they'll probably move against him and he'll be gone by the end of the summer?
Probably yes, but you see, we have another election in Manchester on the 26th, 27th of this month, and if Labour actually lost big, or if Reform won, and that really would be quite a turning point there. But what I was going to say, the people who you look at that could replace him, replace Keir Starmer, cannot run for a simple reason. Angela Rayner, who used to be the deputy prime minister, and she is popular with the left and with the trade unions and the ethnic minorities and so on. So she's the left of the party, and she has got a court case with the HMRC, that's the tax authority here.
I'm afraid. I'm sorry. We are just out of time, but I know where you were going with that. They're all a little bit. They've all got skeletons.
Nobody can run against it.
Yes. Well, we'll see what happens with that, and we'll see what happens with the AI as well. Adil Darwish, parliamentary correspondent. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. Thank you very much for being on Q News. So as deadlines loom over Ukraine's battlefields and new laws target digital deception in Britain, a shared question echoes. Can political timelines and prison centres truly shield the vulnerable, or do they risk becoming symbols of action while human suffering continues just beyond the headlines? Thanks for watching In Focus today. Have a very nice evening.